Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm kind of giving an overview to all of the Alien films which were made by various directors. I've done a separate review of the new Alien film Alien Romulus, but I really felt the urge to watch all 6 of the previous Alien films again. I've watched them all pretty much as they came out. I think the original Alien is the only one that I haven't seen at the cinema. I'd love to see this on a big screen actually. I must keep an eye out for a screening of it. The first thing to say is that for me, there are things to enjoy about all of the Alien films. I love space films generally, and the Aliens are classic movie monsters. Looking back at my experience with these films over the years, I can unequivocally say that I loved Alien and Aliens when I originally saw them both. For the next 4, I'm not sure now that this is really true, but it feels that the 4 films after Alien and Aliens gradually went downhill, and my enjoyment of each one decreased with each release. There were things that I enjoyed about each of these films, but I couldn't help but constantly compare them with Alien and Aliens and notice all of the differences that make them not as good. Just to say that I haven't included the 2 Alien versus Predator films in this overview. I can say though that although I know these films aren't popular amongst a lot of people, I actually quite enjoy them. Just at the level of having these 2 iconic monsters in the same film, it's highly unlikely that I'm not going to enjoy these films at some level. So watching these 6 previous Alien films plus Alien Romulus has turned out to be a better experience than I was actually expecting. There's 2 points I can make here. First, as I've said, I previously was always tripped up by noticing the things that made these films not as good as Alien and Aliens. However, I think that this time I watched them with a bottle half full attitude, and I focus less on the things that I don't like in the films and more on the things that I could enjoy. This actually made quite a big difference. The second surprise really was that watching them all together, pretty much one per day, was like watching a really good TV series, especially the first 4. Ripley is such an iconic character, and to see her in the 4 films back to back was as enjoyable as binging on a great TV series. Even Prometheus and Alien Covenant fit in well in creating this overall universe. Despite saying that I focused on the positives, there was a new negative that I noticed from watching all the films together, and that is the lack of continuity in some of the characters. Newt and Hicks both survive at the end of Aliens, but then they're both just dead at the beginning of Alien 3. It's the same with Alien Covenant, where Elizabeth Shaw is dead at the start of the film, despite the fact that she's alive at the end of Prometheus. It's funny that apart from Ripley, the only characters to appear in more than one film are the 3 androids, the synthetics. Of course, there may be good reasons why it's not possible for an actor to do later films, but we get so used to this in the big franchises, and this is the one big negative that I felt that kind of really jumped out when watching all the films back to back. On the other hand, I did love the continuity in the synthetics with Ash and Rook, Bishop and Michael and Walter. While on this point of characters being brought back for more films in the franchise, given that Alien Romulus is set between Alien and Aliens, there would have been scope to bring back Ripley. Also, could they have brought back the Marines from Aliens? That would be so cool to see Vasquez, Hicks and Hudson in Alien Romulus. Just imagine that. Although to be fair, given that they haven't seen the aliens before at the start of Aliens, it wouldn't be consistent for them to be in Romulus. We'd have to have a multiverse situation, which I definitely wouldn't advocate for the Alien franchise. So let me just give a quick opinion on each of the films. Alien is amongst the best films ever made, in my opinion. I think that Ridley Scott's work is sometimes hit and miss. Some is great, some not so great, but this is a masterpiece. It's kind of got the best of 2001: A Space Odyssey and Jaws. It's such a brilliant film. This is a horror film, and it's just so well made. It has all of the horror and thriller devices that work. A distress signal that creates intrigue and mystery, people being picked off one by one, a countdown. What I love about Alien, and this doesn't apply to any of the other Alien films, is the sparing use of the aliens in action scenes. The action is absolutely fantastic. But a lot of the film is set in the spaceship, in the corridors, in this claustrophobic, brightly lit white environment with long periods of silence that really build up the tension. The cinematography is thrilling, and I think that this is really enhanced by exciting use of a handheld camera. I think the script is really so good as well. There's a fairly lengthy scene at the start of the film where the crew are just sitting round a table chatting. No character says a lot, but each character says something, and each tells us a lot about their character. It's really naturalistic and very compelling. I think this is really important contribution to the film because all of the characters have great depth from this point. Again, this doesn't happen in any of the other films. There are some good characters, but this is special because they're all good. Aliens is something of a surprise after watching Alien. I think there's a strong argument to say that it's a different genre than Alien. Obviously, they're both the monster in space genre, but Alien is a psychological thriller, a pure horror film. Aliens is more like a war film. The military aspect of this film with the Marines is what I found particularly enjoyable about it. I think that the story in Alien 3, set in the prison colony, is actually quite good. I did enjoy this film when it came out in the cinema. I do think it has a bit of a slow start compared to the previous two, and I did find that the direction of the story seems a bit uncertain for a while, but then it kind of finds its way, and it's an entertaining film. I would have said that the CGI looks terrible in it. In the previous films, we don't see whole aliens running down a corridor. I love how the first two Alien films use puppets in this claustrophobic environment. I think that both those first films have an incredible physicality, and Alien 3 just doesn't, and it's a definite disappointment. I actually Googled it and did a little bit of research, and there's a view amongst some Alien fans that Alien 3 is unfairly criticised for its use of CGI. There's a really good short video on YouTube called How Much CGI Was Used in Alien 3. We see that those scenes with aliens running were made with rod puppets, and we see these puppets in action being worked by a number of people. Of course, a form of CGI was used to put them into the film alongside the actors, and all these years later it really doesn't look good. But apparently this was groundbreaking technology for its day. So maybe we shouldn't be too critical of it. That said, Alien and Aliens still, on the whole, look amazing. So Alien 3 just didn't match that. There's a strange thing in Alien 3 where a couple of times we see the alien, the whole thing, seems to be fluorescent green. I wondered if this was supposed to signify something, but from what I could find out by Googling it, I don't think that this was intentional. This wouldn't happen today with advanced colour correction methods, but I don't know why this was left in the edit. So the sad thing about Alien 3 is that Ripley dies, and so when we watched it, we didn't know if we were going to have a fourth Alien film. There's a clue in the title of the next film, Alien Resurrection, that Ripley is resurrected for a fourth film in the franchise. Actually, she's not resurrected, she's a clone of the real Ripley. I remember not liking this film when I saw it at the cinema. My memory is that I just wasn't satisfied with Ripley in this film. It wasn't Ripley. However, of all the films in the franchise, this is the one that I enjoyed much more this time than previously. I thought that the setup was pretty good from the start. I thought it was a good group of characters. I actually really enjoyed Ripley this time with the new personality. She's kind of half the old Ripley and half this badass version of Ripley, with a bit of xenomorph DNA giving her a hint of alien in her personality. I think this is where it worked well, seeing the films back to back. It fits well into the sequence of films in a way that it perhaps didn't when there were long gaps between the films. At least that's what I felt on this viewing. I really liked some of the comedy with the Ron Perlman character, and there was some comedy in Ripley's new personality, which was fun. Okay, then we come to Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Something is different about both of these films. They're both set before any of the original films. For me, and this may be a little bit unsophisticated, the most important thing for me in an Alien film is some great xenomorph action. And all of the first four films deliver on that. I really didn't enjoy Prometheus or Alien Covenant when they first came out. And this is the first time I've seen either of them again, actually. I did enjoy them both a lot more this time. Only at the end of Alien Covenant do we actually get some xenomorph action. Prior to that, we do have assorted alien creatures, but neither of these films have that real xenomorph satisfaction of the earlier films. And there does seem to be a lot more CGI than in the earlier films. It's not that it looks terrible or anything, it's just that it definitely doesn't have the same physicality. We have these massive structures and sprawling environments, which must all have been computer generated. They just do not have the physicality of those earlier films, which is one of the things that is so important for me. I know that some people criticise these films for being more cerebral, for explaining too much about where the aliens have come from. It is true that in the first four, we really don't need to know where they've come from. This really doesn't feel like something that's lacking. I do have mixed feelings about this. I kind of agree with this point, but this time round, watching the films as a series, I actually enjoyed these two more than I expected. The turnaround, in my opinion, wasn't as big as with Alien Resurrection, but I did like them more nonetheless, and I think that Michael and Walter, the synthetics in the two films, are iconic alien characters that are well at home in the franchise. Finally, we come to Alien Romulus. I've done a separate review of this film, but just to say that I had my usual disappointment on first viewing, that feeling of it's not as good as Alien or Aliens. There were things that I didn't like about it. I think the story is weak and the characters aren't great. It's a naughty group of adolescents who've stolen a ship. For me, there's just not enough mystery and intrigue in the story. But the xenomorph action is amazing. In fact, I might go as far as saying that it's possibly some of the best alien action we've seen. I think these xenomorphs look fantastic. And the whole film looks great. Space looks awesome, and I love the interior spaceship settings. This is 1000% better than Prometheus or Alien Covenant. So they're my thoughts on all of the Alien films. One final thought that I had was around feeling a bit confused about who had directed and written all of the films. This table shows the directors, writers and producers for each of the film. And there are a few points here that did seem to me worthy of comment. First, I hadn't realised that Ridley Scott's only contribution to the first four Alien films was to direct the first one, Alien. I mistakenly thought that he'd been involved in all of the Alien films, that he was the most important person in the whole franchise, but this actually isn't true. He came back and directed and produced Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and then he's a producer on Alien Romulus. Clearly, Ridley did have a massive impact on the original Alien film. He is the director of that film, and I think we have to give him credit for how well this film is made. But his role in the whole franchise is a lot less than I thought it was. The next point that really stood out is that the producers, Walter Hill and David Giler, were involved in all of the films. I think that Giler died a few years ago, which presumably explains him not being credited for Alien Romulus. But Walter Hill, the director of classics such as 48 Hours, The Warriors and Red Heat, has been involved in every single Alien film. He's the only common denominator that runs through all of them. I wonder how much of an influence he's actually had on all these films. You can see here that Hill and Giler are both credited as writers on Aliens and Alien 3, so they clearly had a big impact on those films. The third point that jumped out is that of the 7 films, there's been 5 different directors working on them. And they're not just any old directors. Scott, Cameron, Fincher, Jeunet, Alvarez. This is a really distinguished list of directors. It's interesting how most of them were just given one go at it. It can be perhaps seen as a positive that each of these directors brought their own distinct style and vision to the series. It's kind of interesting observing these differences when watching them all in a short period, as I did. However, I also think it's possible that this has resulted in a lack of consistency between the films. I don't want to say that they're not coherent as a series because, as I've said, I did feel that I really enjoyed watching them back to back, but they're not consistently good. And I think that part of the reason for this might be to do with how many different people have been involved in the key positions for each film. Overall, I have really enjoyed the Alien films. I'm not sure that we actually need any more, but I will be first in the queue to see the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.